right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about some comments made by Chris Harris regarding Justin Herbert, and can Justin Herbert develop a clutch factor under pressure? And, well, I also want to talk about whether I agree with Chris Harris or not. So, this is what Chris Harris had to say on the Up and Adams show. So he said how Herbert is missing that clutch factor like a Patrick Mahomes. He admitted Herbert has made clutch plays, but it's that fourth quarter dominance that you could see from a Brady, that you could see from Mahomes or a Big Ben. He talked about how nervous Herbert would be late in games against quarterbacks like those. He said, I knew Brady could always bring that team back even if we were up 20. And he also said he's going to have that clutch factor to beat Mahomes because Mahomes has it. Whether or not Herbert improves, the Chargers roster isn't nearly at the Chiefs level and doesn't look like it will be soon. Best of luck to Herbert, but I don't believe it'll be easy to start manufacturing wins against the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. So a lot to say from Chris Harris. And now he talks about Justin Herbert not being clutch. And Justin Herbert actually has 11 career fourth quarter comebacks, which is just 3 fewer than Mahomes, even though Herbert started his NFL career in 2020, which is a couple of years after Mahomes. And he's 2-5 against the Chiefs. Now, if you go back and you look at most of those games, they come down to one possession. Particularly if you go back to the games in LA, there was the one from 2021, that was an overtime game, and then also the following year, that was the game that Travis Kelce had 3 touchdowns. And Justin Herbert made great plays in both of those games. It's just, it was Patrick Mahomes at the end that came back, and they won those games. And, 2-5. One of the wins was when the Chiefs were playing their backups. The other win was Brandon Staley's first season as head coach. That was I think it was the week 2 or week 3 matchup in Arrowhead, and the Chargers won that game. But I think Herbert does have a clutch factor. I think he's just gotten some bad breaks, particularly against the Chiefs. We can go back and look at every individual game that, has come down to the wire. But, 11 fourth quarter comebacks. That does tell you that, there is a clutch factor when it comes to Herbert. But you know what? Herbert hasn't been part of a lot of big games, particularly when it comes to the postseason. He only played in one postseason game and played really well in the first half, not so well in the second half, and that led to, collapse, and the Jaguars ended up winning that game and moving on. But I think also another game I could think about is the game against the Raiders. When they could have tied and both made the playoffs, but the Raiders ended up, getting into field goal range, kicking the game-winning field goal. The amount of fourth downs that Herbert had to convert in that game. On touchdowns too. To Mike Williams, and I think Joshua Palmer as well. Those were some clutch throws there. I think Justin Herbert does have a clutch factor. But I guess for Chris Harris, he doesn't think so. But I think, like I said, you go back to that game. I know the Chargers didn't win that game, but I don't think you could blame Herbert for that loss. But, 11 fourth quarter comebacks. He does have a clutch factor. I think he definitely does have a clutch factor. It's just, he's 2-5 against the Chiefs. If you just look at that on the surface, it's that's the team that you got to try to beat. But if you look at some of those games, going more depth with those, Justin Herbert did what he was supposed to do. It's just you had Patrick Mahomes on the other side to match him, and they lost some tough games there. And I think now, with Jim Harbaugh in the fold, the Chargers are on the come-up. And I think that, this year might not be the year. Now, I said they could maybe be a sneaky good team, get into the playoffs, but I think the following year, that's when this team is really going to start getting it going. But I think part of it had to do with just, Brandon Staley just was not a good coach. And I think that's a huge piece of the pie. And now you let him go. You bring in Harbaugh. I think you're going to see better results now. Now again, it's going to take some time. I don't think the Chargers are going to be this powerhouse, but I think they could be a good team. They got the quarterback. I think they have the head coach. Now they just got to go out there and prove it. But back to what Chris Harris had to say. Yeah, I mean, you're also comparing him to, the standard for everyone, and that's Tom Brady. Justin Herbert is not Tom Brady. Justin Herbert's not Peyton Manning. And he's probably not going to eclipse those guys. Maybe Peyton Manning, but not Tom Brady, because just the amount of success that Tom Brady had in the postseason, it's going to be hard to match that. Now, Patrick Mahomes is almost halfway there with the Super Bowl rings, but yeah, it's going to be hard. And yeah, I said Peyton Manning's probably easier out of the two, but it's going to be hard to eclipse Peyton Manning. But Peyton Manning actually wasn't great in the postseason, and Justin Herbert only has one career playoff game. So, we'll see. It's just now you got to deal with the present-day quarterback, and that's Patrick Mahomes, who's right now the standard for today. And it's hard to beat Patrick Mahomes, especially in the postseason. Only one player has been able to do that. That's still playing, and that's Joe Burrow. Now, Brady has, but Brady is, now a broadcaster. So he's not coming back. And who knows, but he's not coming back. Joe Burrow is the only man that has defeated Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. That's still playing. And we've seen teams like the Ravens. They went down against them. The Bills. How many times the Bills have gone up against them in the playoffs and lost? Maybe Justin Herbert and the Chargers, maybe they could be that team. Who knows? But you play with them. Right now you got to focus on, the division. Trying to knock them off in the division and then go from there if you do go up against them in the postseason. But I think they're a year away before contending for the division because it's still the Chiefs' division until someone proves worthy to knock them off. And maybe it is the Chargers because, you got the Broncos that, we'll see, what their quarterback situation is like. And then the Raiders, of course, they gave him problems last year, but, the Raiders need a quarterback. The Chargers have one, and I think they have the head coach. So I think right now the Chargers have the best chance in that division. But, even saying that, I don't see anybody knocking them off this year. But I think the Chargers are going to build themselves up, and they will be a team that gives the Chiefs problems. But, we have to wait and see on that. But, yeah, some interesting comments made by Chris Harris. I don't agree. I think Herbert is clutch. But, yeah, comparing him to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and those guys, yeah, he doesn't stack up against them. So he's still got his whole career ahead of him. And I think he's going to have some big moments where he's going to prove himself. But, again, only time will tell. Only time will tell. But let me know what you guys think about what Chris Harris had to say. Do you agree with him? Do you think that Justin Herbert is not clutch? And does he have to develop this clutch factor? I think he already has it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. So we're going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about Darren Waller. And it seems like he's going to retire. Giants are expecting him to retire before minicamp. So I'll get into that, just kind of talk about how that impacts the Giants. And that's what we will do when we come back from our third break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.